Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome. This is 2024. We are coming back to you, bringing you what we promised you, what we've done for 2 years in a row, bringing you ordinary people doing extraordinary things with the purpose of learning, relearning, and unlearning. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to bring somebody who have been talking about this, who lives the talk, who has done it and continues to do it. She's even taken a break and come back to do it again. My friend Natalie, welcome TJK. Welcome to JK One-on-One. And thank you for accepting our invitation to come and share your knowledge, your experience with our audience.
Oh
Please
my God.
welcome and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be invited. And who says no to you, Justin? So, yes, I'm thrilled to be here. I've had such a good time watching you and your trajectory and cheering you on through Nyaka, through your many ventures, and embodying servant leadership in a way that's a beacon for us all. So I also want to kind of shine a light upon you as well. So yeah, so excited about this conversation.
Thank you, thank you. Where are you today?
That's a good question because there's sort of a game in the company of like, where in the world is Natalie? Right now I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
Yes.
I have two soulmates in a city, Paris and Boston. And so, yeah, I'm home in Boston right now.
Home in Boston right now. Take us a little back to the little girl. Where were you born and raised? And who were the influencers in your life, mentors, people who shaped the woman you've become?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, I was born in Bristol, Pennsylvania, and grew up mainly in Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia, Main Line, Valley Forge. Moved around a great deal because we were raised by a single mom. She showed great courage, leaving an unhealthy marriage. She had 5 kids, all under 5 years old, while still in her 20s. And keep in mind, this is an era where women couldn't get an apartment without having a male co-signer.
Whoa.
So yes. So we struggled financially as a family. And so I'm grateful for programs like food stamps and free lunches and things like that. So my mom could go to college while she concurrently worked 2 jobs in enabling her to lift us out of struggle at that level. And I like this question around upbringing and more and what shaped us, because one of my curiosities about people in the impact space is what showed up in their childhood, age 10 and under generally, that would point to the work that they're doing today. And I remember at school, I started the panel discussion having people answer that, more than a bio that we could read. And the answers were amazing. And in my case, I didn't share what mine was, so I'll just share it here. But age 10 and under, what shaped me was, or one of the things that shaped me was 3rd grade watching a film strip of starving children in Africa.
Yes.
Right. And so, and I don't know if people remember, well, you're not in the right age group for knowing film strips, but anyway, it had such a profound effect upon me. And again, we were in American poverty, which is nothing compared to, so anyway, all of this to say, what it ended up awakening in me was a sense of agency, that I actually didn't have to sit with that heartbreak and could do something about it. So even as an 8-year-old, I started throwing fundraising fairs for NGOs. I didn't know they were called NGOs at the time, and it would send the money off to these organizations. I remember writing it all out and sending the money, and it was sent in cash. I mean, it was maybe $5 and coins and things like that. And this is an era where kids were feral. So I don't even know if my mom knew what we were doing or what I was doing, and would go door to door to stores to get prizes and games donated, food, drinks, things like that. So, and other things as well at age 10 and under. but that was one of the things that points directly to my work today as, doing fundraising for a global NGO. So it definitely has that through line. Yeah, so I find that fascinating. And I find people in the impact space, oftentimes our deepest passions spring from our deepest wounds. One of the other things that comes from that era is there was a staggering amount of struggle in our family. And so people can take different paths with that, but many of us arrive at being unable to bear being a witness to pain and suffering and not doing something about it. And so that little 8-year-old, that was that great awakening of I actually can do something about it in my 8-year-old way that ended up, of course, snowballing from there.
I have had stories of kids who were not eating their food. Even of recent, Feed the Children used to run these midnight infomercials on TV. And kids who are not eating, their moms will tell them, you see, there are kids who cannot eat in Africa. You need to eat and finish your food. The things that shape us, who we are, many times, I've said so many times on this channel, we want to look so far away from home, but our mentors, our influencers, our biggest memories come from that family, and they end up shaping us to where we are. And so you grew up, mom worked so hard. Where did you go to college?
Yeah, well, and to do with that, the refrain in our home was there are starving children in Biafra, and I'm like, what's Biafra? And then my younger sister thought Biafra was Biafra, New Jersey, and she thought she was born in Biafra.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that amazing? So anyway, yes, that absolutely shaped us. That was a refrain in our home. And to do with where I went to university, I actually came up in a very unusual way. And I mean, you just heard it was yeah, a bit of a struggle. So the short answer is I didn't go to university, at least not straight away. I did end up going to an amazing community college in my late 20s because I was so starved for art, literature, nourishment along those lines. But right out of high school, I started working. And so there's an interesting story there. I was basically expected to drop out of high school pregnant and end up in jail. These are things that were messages that I received growing up. And so fortunately, I had this I'll show you wiring that really turned on at age 18 when I was working for a trade association and I was a secretary. I focused my senior year, junior year of high school on office technologies. My mother's advice was as long as you can type, you can eat. And so, which is, looking back was like, good advice. And yet, really, that's what you want. Anyway, but kind of getting into the workforce and then really being able to rise in a very, very quick way really turned on my ambition genes, plus that I'll show you wiring that carried me enormously, at least for a couple of decades. And so anyway, it's amazing because I'll often be invited to speak at universities and no one ever asked where I went to college. And I'm like, oh, but I want you to, because I think there's so much richness in my journey. My creativity was not educated out of me. I had to learn to be very clever, very resourceful, extremely hardworking, especially in an era where women had to work 2 or 3 times as hard for half as much while being sexually harassed almost nonstop. While in an era where we also had to have the shoulder pads and be a dude and work, in these patriarchal structures and more. So holy smokes, that really fuels so much of what I do and care about and work on today. And I was insecure about not having that degree for many, many years. And then I was doing a series of interviews. I wanted my next chapter of my career to be spiritually informed, which was where Black Fox Philanthropy was born. But in that interview, one of the questions I would ask folks is, what's the most interesting thing about your life? And so anyway, one of the lunches we had to reschedule. So there I was with the interview questions, bespoke to her. But then I thought, well, I'll just answer some of these questions myself. And it was when I got to the question of what's the most interesting thing about your life, what popped to mind was that I've done all that I've done. And had the successes that I've had, corporate executive by the time I was in my mid-30s for the largest woman-owned company in Colorado, launching a nonprofit, a national, anyway, I won't go into all of that, but it was just sort of this like, oh, I think what's most interesting is that I've done this without these things that society tells us we need. And this albatross, this insecurity, this I'm not enoughness suddenly became this, actually, that's my superpower, because it has forged me in a way that gives so many advantages to running a social enterprise and being the kind of leader that I would like in terms of inclusivity and recognizing the whole person, not just the parchment or what society deems as success or valuable.
Look at that. And so when young people are listening and they go, I don't have an MBA degree, so I cannot start a business. I don't have this, so I can't do this. These are all things society impresses and puts on us that digs into the insecurities. So there is the lesson for us right there. No matter who you are, you follow your passion, you dig deeper, you have your God, higher power, talents that are within you, you dig on it and you will get to the other side successful. And that, my friend, goes into asking you this question. How did your journey as the founder and CEO of Black Fox Philanthropy begin? You just highlighted it. Natalie is the CEO and founder of this amazing organization that helps other organizations around the world raise the capital, the fund, the investments they need to thrive.
Oh, thank you for
you are doing it for a global society. And that's how we met. So
yeah.
take us back how it was born, why it was born, and anything else you want to tell us about Black Fox Philanthropy and why Black Fox? Why couldn't it be just Black Fox?
Well, I'll start with the why Black Fox. So the day I brought my daughter home from the hospital when she was born, I was giving her a tour of my home, which was very gorgeous. I'll just say that. And keep in mind, with my background, I'm giving her a tour of like, holy smokes, how do I raise you in an environment like this, in an affluent community like Boulder, Colorado, and things along those lines? And just so giving this tour, and then as I'm holding her, and then like looking out the backyard, which is like 5 acres in Boulder, Colorado, it's just gorgeous on a mesa. And anyway, there's this black fox in our backyard, and just we lock eyes, and it was this powerful moment. And I don't know if it was 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute, but it was just so powerful. It became our totem sort of spirit animal as Sophie was growing up. And yes, and then when I was starting Black Fox Philanthropy, I was, filling out the paperwork, and it was like, what's the name of the organization? And it just dropped in Black Fox Philanthropy. And I was like, yes, of course, because in the spirit world, a fox is a teacher and guide. And as fundraising strategists, we are teachers and guides. This was before we became execution partners, where we're most known now as being an outsourced fundraising department of sorts. Yes. So it just really, really fit. So anyways, I love the name. We're doing a rebrand to Black Fox Global. So we're unhooking from the word philanthropy for a few reasons, which also helps unhook me. I do not have founder syndrome that I'm aware of, and for the next decade of impact, it's very centered upon the leadership team. But how it began was, really, as I alluded to earlier, I bequeathed my nonprofit to the Denver Art Museum, 2011. Wanted my next chapter to be spiritually informed. I originally, which is what really brought on a lot of, the interview series of leaders and Bodhisattva handyman, just different people that I saw with amazing impact and servant leadership and embodying many other qualities. And so at the time, I thought I would focus upon starting a leadership program for under-resourced girls, teens, really, of color. Not necessarily, but just really under-resourced. And so and these young women who were already showing up as leaders in their communities. And so in my due diligence, I was interviewing national women, young women programs, leadership programs, and more. And the CEOs, the executive directors, they were so generous with their time, with their struggles, with what was working, what wasn't working, to help me shape what I was wanting to do in Colorado. And what I realized was there were such extraordinary programs that already existed. Girls Inc. is national. There are many, many. But the one thing they all had in common, there were 5 that I did my due diligence centered around, and all 5 of them, what they also had in common was they were in some form of pain around fundraising. And I thought, here are these extraordinary programs, infrastructure, leadership, and more. The most inefficient thing I could possibly do is start another leadership program for young women. I can better serve these missions by focusing upon my main zone of genius, which is fundraising. So even in my corporate career, I was VP of Sales and Marketing So sales is fundraising. Fundraising is sales. It's a very sacred form of sales, but it's sales. And so I thought, my main zone of genius is sales, marketing, fundraising. If I could resource these leaders in a way where they could get their work over the finish line, how gorgeous is that? And so really that was really the genesis of Black Fox Philanthropy. And it also started on some level out of a sense of frustration. As a funder, I wanted far more impact than my relatively small funding could do. So that sense of urgency, that appetite for impact, that drive really was a frustration. And that's where I thought, but I can do this through creating an army of young women who pay it forward. It was like, all that aside, no. I can have far greater impact by resourcing organizations. And I was really focused upon Colorado at the time. What pivoted that was within the first year of starting Black Fox Philanthropy, I went to opportunity collaboration. I think that's where we met. Yes, exactly. And so, meeting leaders like you. So Jackson, I literally, the week before I went to the first OC, I think it was 2014, I had breakfast with a billionaire. I thought, I'm a mover and shaker. This is, I was doing something for the Women's Foundation of Colorado at the time and meeting with him. And I thought I was really going to make things happen. And then I go to OC and I was like, oh my God, I am a jack. Like 100%, these are the leaders I meant to serve. It was a thunderbolt. And we really pivoted on a dime to focus upon resourcing leaders like you. And boy, I definitely did not know what I was getting into. Callings call for you to grow into them. I did not have everything I needed or everything I needed to know to serve leaders like you at the time. And it was a hella learning curve, but I just went all in. And so fast forward 10 years and here we are. But we just celebrated a 10-year anniversary last year, rebrand to Black Fox Global for the next decade, and what that's going to look like is so exciting. It's so juicy, especially it's exciting and juicy coming back from a mini sabbatical, recharged. Yes. And ready for that next decade of contribution and getting to do this dance with leaders like you, with so many others that we get to serve. We pinch ourselves all the time. We get to work with clients like you and missions.
You've done so well, Natalie. And while you were on this break that we call sabbatical in the United States, I was at Harvard University doing advanced leadership initiative for a whole year. Though it was not a sabbatical, it was also taking me away from a day-to-day running of the organization into a different environment where you focus on you and your leadership skills. I want to get more into the sabbatical piece, but I also want to get this balance. I get so many women who ask me this question. As a mother, you are a mother, you are a CEO, you are an advocate for gender equality, and there's all these different things you have to navigate. You attend OC where we meet. You are a member of NEED where we've also met, spoke there. You're a member, Karen and Sarah, the Torreditos, our friends in Boston, Colorado, with all the huge group of people from Colorado who got OC and then Skoll Foundation. How do you balance all these different buckets,
Wow. Oh
parts,
my goodness. Yeah.
and still keep smiling and doing what you do?
Well, I am resourced after a 2-month sabbatical, but I will say I'm an empty nester now, so there is more spaciousness for pursuits beyond Black Fox.
Mm.
And it's tricky because I have to admit I haven't always balanced things well. I think the work is a body snatcher when you're in this space. The stakes are so high, the work is never done. And so I feel like I want to be genuine in answering the question to say that I've actually I have flirted with burnout. I've been in full-on burnout in the past. Actually, at school, it was a couple of years ago. I think I did, yeah, two or 3 years ago. I did a session on from burnout to bliss, and all of my hacks and all of my, this webinar through their wellness hub. And then radical candor, I got body slammed back into burnout, like within a few months after delivering that session on how I finally cracked the code. Now I have to say that it helps to have a fantastic COO like Lisa Heinert, who originally came to us as a client in 2017. And so thanks to her and the leadership team and that model, I wasn't able to hook for a couple of months. But for a lot of those years, while, being a mom, also a very unusual, I'll call it unusual, family system that was extremely consuming, fighting for my daughter's safety and well-being. And and yet I have this inner critic, or it's kind of call it the crappy inner roommate of, yet you're still not doing enough. You're still not doing enough. There's, the stakes are so high and so many people, we have a team of 30 team members all over the world. And it's like this, how do I resource them to get, and fortunately it's unhooked for me a great deal. Thank you, Lisa Heinert and others in the company.
Okay, Lisa.
Oh my gosh, thank you. But that drive of you're not doing enough, I think I finally allowed a more gentler, wiser voice whisper, you are enough. And so I think a lot of my drive was also tied to worth issues. Like if I can contribute more, if I can do more, if I can do then I'll feel a sense of enoughness. So I think, which also ties to mental health then, like, why do we drive ourselves so hard? We burn so hot and then we do burn out, but is there more at play? Are there unconscious commitments? And so that was a lot of kind of that journey I did through the inner MBA, through Mindful NYU and Sounds True, was unpacking, why am I working so hard? Yes, the stakes are high. Yes, we serve extraordinary missions, but how can I do this in a more sustainable way? So that's been a journey. So it's funny, like you're asking, how do I balance it all? It's kind of like, well, I can't say that I always have, but I'm fresh off of sabbatical, so we'll see how I do. But I think my personal mantra last year was boundaries and discernment. The company mantra was excellence and ease. We were amazing at delivering with excellence, not with ease. And so we brought in, and it was one of those like, the proverbial duck on the top of the water, looking cool, looking calm, delivering with excellence with a bow on it, but underneath, like, furiously paddling. And so Lisa and I worked with an organizational consultant for 4-month intensive that really helped build that the ease, that infrastructure that enabled us to work together so much more fluidly, beautifully, joyfully. So yeah, so it's a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. The
Work
companies
in progress. It's all of us. We are all work in progress. You know, Natalie, as you speak about your sabbatical and now your balance, and I tend not to use this word balance a lot because I also had a guest one time when I said balance, said, Jackson, I just have buckets. You have a bucket. I am the leader. I'm a lawyer. I am a practitioner. I have a bucket of home, have a bucket of church. I have a bucket of my dancing, my singing. And many times I feel this bucket more empty than the other one, or there is no way I can balance them. The word balance doesn't, and applicable both to men and women, but more to women. You and I have worked together and have known each other for a long time. You described your mom, and you now, the mother, you are raising a daughter. Issues, whether they are in pay equity, whether they are in discrimination at work, patriarchal still happens. I am so glad now after the All Me Too movement that at least there are repercussions to some of these behaviors we've seen over the years. We still run this program in the rural patriarchal society where people are still opposed to it. So I want to take a moment and celebrate the accomplishments and steps and where we are and where we are heading and the blocks you have put in place. So your daughter, my twin girls, Talia and Tessa, can step on those blocks and even go higher. Being Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, we can also say that we all have these dreams where our daughters don't have to be paid less than their counterparts, where people don't have to be discriminated based on their gender, their sexual orientation, or their color. I'm talking about this with Uganda and what's going on. You read the news, you follow. But please do share for those of our listeners who want to know how to make strategies and what principles and strategies do you follow to lead your full purpose-driven life. And I say this with confidence because even before you went to sabbatical, I've been at OC with you. You wake up in the morning and you do yoga. You're always smiling, taking care of your skin bright, your hair always done. What do you do to relax when you're not out in sabbatical? And then talk about the principles and strategies you use in this purpose-driven leadership.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. Well, thank you for saying, and thank you for saying my hair is always done. I'm actually experimenting with silver. So this is a wig. I'm trying to grow my hair. I'm trying to, and I'm still too salt and pepper. I'm like, oh, I want silver. So this is my cheat for the moment.
So my best are salt and pepper, not by choice, but that we do not want to fight. I keep it the way. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, to do with purpose-driven life, I mean, my core belief is the future hinges upon a more just and gender balanced world. I also want to name the fact fathers of daughters like you are some of the fiercest warriors for gender equality as well, and equity and more. So thank you. Men hold up the other half the sky, and the patriarchy is incredibly violent against men and boys also. And boys, young men, they deserve to live fully expressed lives also, including, their whole selves, their emotional body, their all of this. So, but to do with women and why I focus upon women, well, first of all, we're continue to be more economically disadvantaged, experience much more violence, earn less, dramatically underrepresented positions of leadership across all sectors. And yet we're living in the sweet spot of human history where we're more fiercely coming into our power, our voice, wealth, and wealth creation, inherited wealth, but also wealth creation. And we all benefit. Gender equality is a more reliable predictor of peace than a country's GDP or level of democracy. So it's also, so my focus upon women and girls, this is my personal philanthropy, but also through Black Fox Philanthropy, our DNA is very centered upon family-centered, working woman-centered. You know, I was a former executive. I didn't want to work 50, 60 hours a week anymore. I wanted to be the room parent and the soccer coach and the pizza mom and the library mom and be there, you know, to, you know, be with Sophie and all of those things, while also living a purpose-driven life, a life of meaning, contribution, and more. So personal philanthropy is centered upon women and girls, but also our DNA in terms of how we operate as a company. And so the other piece is, you know, we have served clients that serve all 17 SDGs in their missions. But I believe that if we can solve SDG 5, equality first, the other SDGs would fall like dominoes faster. So the more we can resource, yes. So the more we can resource women-led, women-focused organizations, the sooner we'll achieve all of the SDGs. So and you know, the urgency's there, the stakes are high. We've lost gains over the last 4 years. Unless something changes, it's going to take at least another 130 years to close the gender gap. There's so much more to say on this. This is really my home base. And to do with the future of Black Fox and Black Fox Global, the rebrand to Black Fox Global, I would love to see our serving a majority chunk of who we serve focused upon SDG 5. You know, we're a relatively small firm, about 30 team members all over the world. So we very often have a waiting list for our services, especially since we're an outsourced fundraising department model of sorts for many, many, many clients, and many standalone services as well. But when we take on that role, it's so powerful. So if we could put that kind of engine behind more women-led, women-focused organizations, we'll be able to accelerate our impact even more. We're not at that place now necessarily, but that is, as I think about the next decade of impact for Black Fox Global, that's one of the things that would be an ideal state. Hopefully future state, but it's definitely ideal state from my view.
You know, I'm going to ask this for my boys. I've educated so many boys in Uganda, and they have seen me work with so many different organizations around the world to promote women and girl education. When Yaka started, they know they were in classrooms with girls who get the 65% of our enrollment are girls. We work with women. We are serving 20,000 women, empowering them. We are launching a program called Empowering Women to Live, where we have researched and found out that women in rural areas who never have financial freedom, really, they have not lived a life, fulfilled life. So these boys always ask me, but Dad, Papa, Director, what about the boys? Will you empower all these girls? They are going to need to be side by side with boys. What do we do about them? And I tell them this all the time. And I say this purpose because they are going to comment when they do this. I say, launch that program for boys. I have a program at United Nations, Boys to Men. Let you who have seen this and you are already empowered be the leaders in raising boys who will be responsible men, who will take their children and change their diapers, who will sit with their children and read them stories, who will not just look what I provide, therefore I cannot do this. So empowered boys need these empowered women, and I answered the question for you, but I want my boys to know that we talk about this and we continue to advocate for them. Not
Yes.
you are an award-winning children's book author.
So are you.
Thank you. What inspired you to write The Secret Adventures of Anonymous?
Oh, Anonymous. Oh, you know what? I saw I brought that. Yes. So so I alluded to Boulder, Colorado being a very affluent bubble.
Yes.
And I noticed that there was a great deal of entitlement among some of the kids in my daughter's school.
Mhm.
And anyway, what ended up happening, so I used to write anonymous notes to people in the community. And I would want it to be anonymous because I was running a nonprofit. And I would often write to, some of the bold-faced names, like, I see what you're doing in the community, it really matters. Or people who were just silently doing amazing things, but not in any seen way. And so I'd write anonymous notes like, hey, it really matters. And whatever was coming up for me, no return address. And because I just didn't want anyone to think I wanted anything from them, because sometimes they would be funders or leaders in the community. And I'm
Okay.
like, I don't want anything. I just want to
So
know
you
that
put that in the mailboxes?
say, I would just, no, I would put a stamp on it,
Oh,
drop it in the
married.
box, and they would be mailed. No, so they wouldn't know where these notes were coming from. I ended up getting an anonymous letter once, though, back. Anyway, that's a whole other story. I was blown away because it actually, a scene like that actually occurs in this book. So, but anyway, what ended up happening, my daughter Sophie was about 7, I think, 7 or so I'm trying to recall. And I was writing one of those notes one day, Mommy, what are you doing? And she's like, I wanted to do one. So she wanted to do one. And then so she wrote a note, and it was to the janitor, the school janitor, the school cleaner. And
Aw,
then
so
yeah,
cute.
yeah, this woman just seemed like she was having a rough time or rough go of life. And so Sophie wrote this lovely, sweet note. And then at the end, she's like, how do you spell anonymous?
Yes.
We were joking around anonymous, anonymous, and anyway, anonymous kind of took hold. So she would sign the notes and draw a little mouse and a little mask on the mouse, and just thank you for. I don't remember. She wrote one to Mitt Romney. I just came across it recently because after he lost, she felt so badly that he lost. She wasn't for him,
Yes.
but she just like, oh, he lost. So she wrote him a note saying, you ran a hard race. I think you should try again. And signs it anonymous and draws this little mouth. It was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. So anyway, the story, so it's really a story based upon her. If there's a new kid in the school, they would get an anonymous note. There was a new head of school who arrived at Boulder Country Day. And so she wrote an anonymous note to the head of school of, we're happy you're here, or whatever. So it was just inspired by her doing these lovely things. And the thing about kids is they're born with empathy, kindness, and more. Our job as parents is to be stewards of that and encourage that. And anyway, I won't go into too much of the state of empathy among college kids and more. But anyway, all of this to say, it was meant to be a bit of an antidote. The downside was it kind of outed her as anonymous. So after a few years of, being this secret kindness superhero, then people actually knew who finally Anonymous was. But it was still it was a sweet thing to do. Yeah, and also it's reaching millions of kids through the social emotional curriculum through Think Equal, which is paired with the UN. So it's
Yes.
been translated into, like last I heard, like 12 languages and more. So it's funny because, well, Jackson, we've been busting our butt for 10
Can't
years
say busting our ass.
working with Black Fox Philanthropy, and yet this little mouse might end up having far, far, far more impact on a global scale, because the whole idea is if you can be taught hate at home, you could be taught love at school. So this social emotional learning, this curriculum is really extraordinary, and so many countries have adopted it. So there are countries where you can't get past early years education without having read Anonymous.
That's very, very, very good.
Really
And
cool.
really, I want to commend you for being a selfless giver. We all
Mm.
write books. I've written 5 children books. We've had this conversation about getting them out to the world. I don't want to make money on these books. I'm actually talking to the USID in Uganda. Publish the books, give them to children, translate them in as many languages as you can. It's like a cook in a kitchen. You make all this food is yummy, and the more people can eat it, the
Yeah.
better about what you. So thank you for doing that, sending it through United Nations. And now that you are back from sabbatical, maybe another anonymous part 2 can come through.
Oh, la 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 la. You know, it's interesting because I do have entrepreneurial wiring. In fact, so having a 2-month rest, I've had another social enterprise for 4 years, hovering, and it was starting to come through really strongly during sabbatical. And I'm like, no, stop. I need a rest. I need a rest. But hopefully it will be picked up in the ethers by some other host. But anyway, I don't know if it's going to be another Not a Mouse or more. I think, well, we shall see. We shall see.
Keep it in mind. And if you ask me and Karen and Sarah, we both tell you Advanced Leadership Initiative at Harvard University has your name all over.
Oh
So
my gosh. Oh, I get to have lunch with or dinner with Karen on I think Friday. So I'll get to learn more about the journey you guys have been on this past year.
and all answer questions. It's an amazing journey. And wait until she tells you what she's working on as a result of the year we spent there. Natalie, you are a member of so many different arms of all people making a difference. Moving millions, women moving millions, member at United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, member Founders Pledge, Opportunity Collaboration where we met. Please do share some of your memorable nuggets from participating in these different organizations on a global level and on a local.
Oh God.
Done.
Oh, good question. Actually, you know, it just flashed to mind as a memorable moment. And this actually ties to something else we had touched upon just in getting ready to have this conversation. And that is, I was at the Women Moving Millions Summit. I think it was 2018. And Vanessa Daniels from the Groundswell Fund, she said from the stage, if you are not actively working to dismantle racism, then you're on the moving sidewalk contributing to it.
Ooh.
Mic drop.
Powerful.
I mean, Jackson, I fancy myself a good person. And I was like, oh, I'm on the moving sidewalk. So that was such an awakening. And it was like, I feel it in my gut now, even today. So, so that was incredibly memorable. And going back to that 8-year-old of like, wait, I don't have to sit with heartbreak. I don't have to sit with this. So we started Black Fox Fellows at Black Fox Philanthropy to resource women of color from the funder side of the table to have more access, more visibility, and more. So Black Fox Philanthropy underwrites them to go to opportunity collaboration. And and there are varying stages of career. Originally, it was focused upon more mid-career
Yes.
women of color, because what we wanted was for them to be in greater and greater positions of power, influence, decision-making, and more, because they're making the kinds of decisions that are in alignment with our values. And so, so anyway, it started then. So we launched that in 2019, and it's been amazing. We've had such extraordinary fellows, Latanya Mott-Frett, Ada Williams Prince of Pivotal Ventures, I think Kim Osagi of Echoing Green. So now many are at the CEO level already. Others are on their way to that level. So it really just depends upon what does the OC community need, because what the fellows also do is they hold office hours. They're also showing up with generosity, with sharing their time, their wisdom, their insights, not necessarily funding unless there's alignment, but really getting them in a position where they're far more, I guess, visible, helping to change not only change, hopefully the trajectory of their careers. Again, some are CEOs already and don't need, the mentoring with me or anything along those lines. but it's also changing the face of philanthropy in terms of you look around OC and who are the funders? Well, it's a really high percentage of people of color from the funder side of the table in these conversations. So even just changing the face of philanthropy from that lens as well. So there are a number of reasons why starting Black Fox Philanthropy, but it all traced back to that memorable moment at the Women Moving Millions Summit in 2018. Thank you, Vanessa Daniels. That was a big awakening for me.
That is really powerful. And when we think that you are busy doing all these things and then look at the list of boards you are serving on, things you are participating in, seminars you are giving, you do not stop.
Wait, we already established I just did. I just stopped for 2 months. Although I type aid my sabbatical a little bit, so I might have to do the cabin in the woods version next time.
Yeah, so this brings back with all these different levels of things you do and conferences you attend each year. When you were thinking about this sabbatical, what was the trigger? And
Oh,
what recommend it to all of us busy CEOs, busy movers in the world? Put a plug for the break that we all need.
yeah.
And for you, what really, really was that when you said, this is the time? No, you have the COO. We've talked about the management that you have in place, but that personal turn that said, this is the time to do it. And then we go into advising people who want to do what you've done.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we touched upon this before. Impact leaders, we burn hot, the stakes are high, we're burning out. And the Well-Being Project, they did an entire summit, June of 2022, yes, in Bilbao, the Well-Being Summit for Social Change. And it was close to 1,000 leaders. And the conversation from the stage over and over again was about burnout, about the high cost of being that energizer bunny, which in the US culture is a reference where it's sort of this nonstop, produce, succeed, and all of these external markers of success. But meanwhile, we're just so emptied out. I was. I have a over-delivering Achilles heel. So that's why my last year was about boundaries and discernment, was also part of that. And so it was also a really, really intense decade. We doubled in size almost overnight with COVID and didn't really have the infrastructure to really to handle it. So again, we would like deliver with a bow, with excellence, not 100% of the time, candidly. And then we'd have to be really good at repair and making it right. That's part of one of the tenets of B Corp. I mean, it's our DNA anyway, but is like absolutely integrity, all of these things, centering people and planet and profit. But so all of these things just really are such big drivers. And so without the infrastructure, I was working obscene hours and never feeling like we were getting ahead of what we needed to. And yet the world was on fire. There were NGOs who were literally having to shutter their doors. And in some cases, those missions were life or death in their communities. So I didn't feel like we could say no and kept taking on more and more. Anyway, it was a recipe for burnout. It was a recipe for, not being able to sustain the organization in a way that we really wanted to have that long-term impact. And so it really just hit a point where we had to focus upon retrofitting infrastructure. Once things calmed down a bit, the wait list calmed down enough. We put these infrastructure and things in place. I will say, I thought the future of work was going to be around feminine leadership principles. And I was really leading Black Fox with this. And yet it was a disaster, Jackson, because without the balance of the energies of masculine and feminine without the masculine energy of like infrastructure, boundaries, and more, it's not really sustainable for the feminine to be able to lead with nurturing and more. You still need checks, balances. This, we're not making widgets. We need to deliver with excellence consistently. And so there has to be checks and balances and accountability and all these things. That it all centers back to Black Fox Code, which I won't go into that so much, but all of this to say, we had to really pause, put a 90-day hold on bringing on any new business to build that infrastructure, that masculine energy being brought in. So I thought it would be, the feminine leadership, the future of work. Absolutely not.
Wow.
It's the balance of the masculine and the feminine together. And now we have that gorgeous balance. And that's what enabled me. And also coming up with a leadership team structure, highly led by Lisa Heiner, our COO. And so really being able to rely upon someone who's so brilliant, so committed, so aware of the work. She was managing director of our case school for 13 years. So worked in East Africa, worked global. So when she came to us as a client in 2017, and then 2020 or 2021, our case with school did that outsourced fundraising department model, our fundraising accelerator. So she had got to experience it from that side of the table as well. So really being able to feel confident, there was a runway up to November, December, first week of January, taking that off. It was all very much in I'm going to butcher this because this is Lisa's side of the house, but just sort of, that organizational plan, that executing on the plan, creating the plan, executing on the plan. I'm classic entrepreneur, super creative, sort of, I live up here in the ethers.
That's me.
And Lisa goes she'll just take it all and okay, now let's put it into da, 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 da.
Yes.
Amazing. So we really have extraordinary, great balance, great work and respect of, each other's zones of genius. And so working that plan that we crafted together, again, with this organizational consultant who's phenomenal. There was a long runway leading up to November, December, first week of January, and absolutely game changing. I so recommend it, Jackson, because you got to have a year off of unhooking largely from Nyaka and your other responsibilities to focus upon yourself, but you were still so in work and into the next. Right. So my sabbatical, it wasn't the cabin in the woods version. I spent the first 5 weeks in Paris, which I also live in Paris part-time. So it was more live, work, play in Paris instead. It was just live, play in Paris. So it didn't have that same slow down quality, but still just unhooking from the day-to-day gave me the spaciousness to look more objectively at Black Fox's journey. And also vision around where we want to go and what my role in that is or is not. It's very much its own entity at this point, not so dependent upon me, certainly not on a day-to-day basis. And that was one of the goals that was achieved, was that the leadership would recalibrate to not be as dependent upon a founder. Yes. And so, but as well, just and having the other leaders, step up in the company and prove that they're they could do this over breakfast. The company doesn't need. I already knew that. As an entrepreneur, a large 80% of my job was already done by launching it and iterating, getting my nose bloodied, getting it wrong, getting it right, iterating, to now where we are today. It's amazing.
Yep. You've done it.
So there are a number of ingredients that contributed, but I guess my advice would be just to set that horizon line deadline of when you're taking sabbatical, even if it's only 2 months. It's absolutely game changing just to resource myself, gain clarity, gain perspective, bring in room for, what is next? What is that? What is the next 10-year or even next 2 years of Black Fox Global? And what's my right role? Everyone in their right role right responsibilities and more, moving me into my right role enables the company to be far more impactful. And also there's, I think companies can grow only as we can scale to the extent that our leadership has the capacity to scale. And if it's only dependent upon me, then that's a lot of pressure. And I also don't know that as a creative, as an entrepreneur, that that's really the, my right role. And so making space for Black Fox Global as its own entity to respond to what the world needs. I've heard many, many times, oh, we need Black Fox 10x, we need it 20x. And I'm like, oh, that sounds exhausting. And I've actually, and I agree. And there are builders and protectors and more. And so we need that builder energy to scale to meet what the world's asking of us. And I'm 57 years old, so I don't have those same, I have drives around impact, but I don't have the empire building gene around this. Entrepreneurs, they see a gap, they fulfill a need, and some want to drive it all the way to the highest heights. Others are like, okay, what's next? What's next? So I'm kind of straddling that what's next, because I do have other impact things that I care very much about, other impact initiatives, while also balancing how do I make space for Black Fox to be what the world is asking of it and get out of the way of that. So anyway, 2 months is I won't say it's ample time, but it was plenty of time to see the company calibrate in a way where it's not as dependent upon me. I could resource myself, recharge my batteries. Yeah. And so I really recommend it. And I'm hoping that we'll do a session at Skoll around this with a number of other players who have taken sabbatical. IDEO actually requires a sabbatical every 5 years from their CEO. I don't know, I think it's 6 months. Many other organizations as well really focus upon sabbaticals to help resource their leaders.
Yeah, recently I was asked to join the board pool for DRK. And one of the discussions with an organization I'm going to be serving on board for, we talked about this. Every 6-7 years at least, the CEO, the founder need to take this sabbatical. So to our listeners, all of you have been CEO 10, 15, 20 years, sabbatical, highly recommended. You have questions, reach Natalie. We'll share website, Black Fox Philanthropy. We'll share a link to the book. And as we come to the conclusion of this conversation, my friend, if you are to give advice to yourself at 18 years of age, what would that advice be?
Okay. I actually wrote a blog post after visiting Shofco in the Kabeir slum. My daughter,
yes.
Yes. So my daughter was 13 at the time, actually. And I'll just answer your question because I ended up writing a blog post because the questions these young women were asking were so powerful and so amazing. But one of the things that that came to mind was I ended up writing kind of an open letter to them. What I wish I had known when I was their age, or 18 or 20, was I wish I knew that God had much bigger plans for me than I had for myself, because I would have treated myself differently with more respect. I think the messages we ingest at a young age about who we are, our worth, being a girl in my culture and my family and more. So had I known that God had much bigger plans for me than I ever did, or much bigger plans for Black Fox than I ever did, I would have, from a very early age, have acknowledged that and treated myself with more reverence and respect. I also wish I would have taken the chip off my shoulder about poverty a lot sooner. When I was with people of privilege, even as a woman who eventually had significant resources myself, relatively significant, I would race to let others know, I'm not like you. I'm not one of you. It was almost a challenge, like this subconscious test by continuing to kind of like put a stake in the ground of I'm not like you. And yet the women who would continue to try to befriend me sort of passed that test. What was really going on was I was assuming they would reject me. So I was kind of rejecting them first. So I had a real chip on my shoulder about wealth, about poverty and wealth and that dynamic. And yet, my God, I was judging them, right? I was judging them for having extraordinary resources when I thought they were judging me for not being a have-not. And that little food stamp girl still very much, I take her with me, she's a part of me still, and it does inform some of my decisions still. But I missed out on so many rich, beautiful relationships because I was really prejudging them, and what a loss. And I'll have a third. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish it.
I'd say that the third thing I would give my younger self advice on is to not see myself as a victim of inequality and injustice. For years, I played within a system that was not set up for me to succeed. It was really set up for me to fail. And I wish I had adopted that sort of not on my watch ferocity, that warriorship a lot sooner. By the time I was a corporate executive, I was able to leverage that in a way that would pave a way for for younger women behind me. But if I had been bolder sooner, I could have brought about even more change. Yeah. That was clunky.
You've done so well.
Thank you.
We can only change the present and the future, and what you have accomplished, and those relationships maybe that didn't form there, you have overcompensated with the work
Thank you.
things you're doing and the trainings that you have done already and the more to come. We'll share more about you and the work. If we can find that blog, definitely we'll also find it and share it with our listeners. Is there something I didn't ask you about that you would like to talk about?
Ooh, actually, Jackson, I'm so curious. No, the answer is no. I actually have a lot more curiosity about you and the Harvard program and more. So, no, these are really thoughtful questions. Thank you. It's clear you were very intentional, very curious, and a wonderful host, and always beautiful to be in conversation with you, Jackson.
Well, thank you for sparing time. We appreciate you. We thank you for the work you've done in this world, the light you shine on the global philanthropy, on the women, on all these SDGs that we are working on, all of us, on that equality, and so much more to come. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Natalie. We appreciate you and the entire team at Black Fox Philanthropy, Black Fox Global, the new
Global 2024. Merci à vous, Jackson. Thank you so much. Really a pleasure.
Let's continue to share and to subscribe and continue to learn, relearn, knowing that the best is yet to come.